want to share with you an article that was written by somebody at the New York Times today, or it was yesterday, I believe. Gulf oil spill is bad, but how bad? That's the headline. So basically, the paper of record is already getting the public ready to believe, once again, that maybe this thing isn't so bad and we can just continue on our merry way because all problems are going to be solved. Now, to their credit, the New York Times also posted articles of an opposition nature. But, you know, this is one of these things that will become prevalent more and more throughout this news reporting. That's pretty much predictable at this point. So the article starts out by oil spill in the Gulf in Mexico is bad. No one would dispute this. But just how bad? Some experts have been quick to predict an apocalypse, painting grim pictures of 1,000 miles of irreplaceable wetlands and beaches at risk, fisheries damaged for seasons, fragile species wiped out, and a region and an industry economically crippled for years. Actually, at this point, that's pretty much certain. So it's not, you know, it's not actually an apocalyptic version. Nobody is saying it's the end of the world. What these people are saying is that this situation is extremely serious. President Obama has called the spill a potentially unprecedented environmental disaster. So I suppose he's put his whole oil agenda on the up and down the East Coast on hold for the time being, you know, until things die down and the public outrage dies down over this. This won't exactly affect policy, but never mind. And some scientists have suggested that the oil might hitch a ride on the loop current in the Gulf, bringing havoc to the Atlantic coast. Well, yes, that might very well happen. Yet, the Deepwater Horizon blowout is not unprecedented, the New York Times assures us, nor is it yet amongst the worst oil spills or accidents in history. And its ultimate impact will depend on the long list of interlinked variables, including the weather, ocean currents, the properties of the oil involved, and the success or failure of the frantic efforts to staunch the flow and remediate its effects. As one expert put it, this is the first inning of a 9-inning game. No one knows the final score. To which some of us can respond, it isn't a baseball game. It isn't a baseball game. The ruptured well, currently pouring an estimated 210,000 gallons a day of oil into the Gulf, could flow for years and still not begin to approach the $36 billion, 36 billion gallons of oil spilled by retreating Iraqi forces when they left Kuwait in 1991. This is an amazing analogy. First of all, the 36 billion gallons of oil spilled by the retreating Iraqi forces, and you can see who's being blamed here, of course, happened not, that oil was not spilled into the ocean. It was spilled in a lot of waterways, but it was not spilled directly into the ocean. So we're talking about two different things here. And the article goes on to say, and it's not yet even close to the magnitude blowout in the Bay of Campeche in Mexico in 1979, which spilled an estimated 140 million gallons of crude before the gusher could be stopped. So you see, it's all about gallons, it's all about gallons of magnitude. It doesn't examine the very variables that these people are talking about. And the article goes on to say, and it will have to get much worse before it approaches the impact of the Exxon Valdez in 1989, which contaminated 1,300 miles of largely untouched shoreline and killed tens of thousands of seabirds, otters, and seals. Blah blah. And you might as well just. It's like saying, before it approaches the impact of the Exxon Valdez accident, it has to get a whole lot worse, Oh, this was just minuscule. Never mind. We can handle it. That's the tone of this article. And of course, no one, not even the oil industry's most fervent apologists, is making light of this accident. Well, of course they're not making light of this accident because they're losing billions of dollars now, especially in their stock prices, as far as BP is concerned. No, they're not making any light of it at all. But on Monday, the article continues, the wind was pushing back the slick in the opposite direction, away from the current. The worst effects of the spill have yet to be felt. And if efforts to contain the oil are even partially successful and the weather cooperates, the worst could be avoided. How nice. Dr. Overton is one of the people quoted here in this article, said he was hopeful that the efforts by BP to place containment structures over the leaking parts of the well will succeed, although he said, of course, it was a very difficult task and it may actually make things worse. And other experts quoted in this article said that while the potential for a catastrophe remained, there were reasons to be guardedly hopeful and optimistic. The sky is not falling, Dr. Quinton Dockin, a marine biologist, and the executive director of Gulf of Mexico Foundation, a conservation group in Corpus Christi, was quoted as saying. Now, just a quick online research will tell you that the Gulf of Mexico Foundation just received a $40,000 grant from no other than ConocoPhillips in the oil industry in 2009. So I suppose you can draw your own conclusions as to how valid this commentary actually is. Other people over at Oceana, scientists who are actually working with real environmental foundations who don't receive their funding from oil companies, have far greater concerns than this article brings forth. Although, they do mention them in passing at the very end of this article. So, Dr. Dockin, of course, gets the last word in this article by saying, the Gulf is tremendously resilient. But we've always got to ask ourselves, how long can we keep heaping these insults on the Gulf and having it bounce back? As a scientist, I have to say, I just don't know. So that's the ending paragraph. Of course, scientists aren't sure about what's going to happen. Scientists should never be sure. They should always question things. But it's kind of a way of saying, in this article that look, you know, it could go either way. We can just keep heaping on this stuff, on the oceans, on our environment, and it's not going to have any long-term consequences because there's always another solution. I'm not sure if there's always another solution. I really am not sure about this at all. Are you?